All right. So, hello, everybody, and hello, Edie. Edie's my
Hi.
guest today, and we'll hear about her in a minute and her journey with the work. But the exciting thing is, well, Edie's right here in the Pacific Northwest in Portland. I'm in Seattle, and we'll hear about the journey for Edie. So, Edie, I'm really glad you're here. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. This is
Yeah.
fun. This is
Yeah.
really fun for me.
So I like to just go back in the historical timeline. You know, where were you? What was happening when you first encountered the work? You know, whether it was just reading Loving What Is, or kind of how you, where did this start for you, and what was going on?
Yeah. Well, there was a little bit of a backstory in that I was in my early 30s and I had a 1 and 2 year old, and my dad died suddenly. And I lived in Portland at the time, and he was in Miami. And I thought I really had done some soul searching and understood that death was a part of life and that this was inevitable and, um, sad and what have you. But I was devastated and surprised by that.
Mm,
Uh,
mm,
I thought I was maybe more evolved than that to be so undone.
mm.
And that, having studied Buddhism and other things, starting at an early age. So that was sort of the catalyst for a shift when I thought I was kind of going along pretty well in life. And
Mm, mm.
so I started going to a hospice bereavement group. And the facilitator of that was this wonderful sage. And he became a teacher of mine, and he heard about Katie coming to town at their Unitarian church and said, "Why don't you come with me? Let's check this out together." And it was a 2 hour event, and it was, I don't know, in the maybe 2004.
Uh-huh.
And somebody, Katie invited us to fill out a worksheet, but it was just this card. It wasn't a full page.
Yeah.
Um,
That.
and
Yeah.
and I wrote mine on my husband, and the gist of it was he needed to help me more with the kids and understand what I was going through, that kind of storyline.
Hmm.
And when Katie invited people to share their work that they'd written, this woman rose her hand and said, raised her hand and said, "I have a worksheet on my husband." And there were several sentences that were verbatim the same as mine.
Wow, that's so weird. That happened in my first time that I ever met
Is
Katie.
that right?
Yeah, like somebody way across the room, and I'm like, wait, she's asking if people are going to read this out loud. I would never read this out loud, you know? And then somebody raised their hand, and it was the exact same worksheet on the same topic.
Yeah. I mean, she had
Cool.
2 young kids. The parallels were
Wow.
many. So it was such a gift because then I could watch the work being done on my situation without having to, like you said, sort of put myself out there. And, um, it was like I was given this opportunity to see my work done for me.
Very wonderful. Wow.
Pretty
Yeah.
cool. And it was done for me. I mean, I really did come home and saw things with my husband completely differently that very night.
Wow.
So I got her book and I signed up for the Esalen worksheet workshop just
Ah,
shortly after that, and waited till my kids got a little older to go to my first school. I think
uh,
I probably saw you at that first school. I have.
yeah. March 2005. But I also went in October 2005, as well as October 2006. I was at those schools.
I think my first one was in 2006.
Yeah,
I'm a little vague on the dates, but and then I enrolled right after my first school. I came home and enrolled in the certification program, and you were my mentor.
So that must have been, I think that certification program was starting like in 2008,
Okay.
just starting. Yeah. That's about the good right timing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that happened, and
So cool.
yeah, it just took off from there. I mean, it was one of those deep knowing experiences where this is the work I've been waiting for.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so clear. Love that. So grateful. Still is. So it's been, whatever, 12, however many years. And it's so my path.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love it. So first worksheet on husband, those people that are close are so good. Did you find yourself, you must have, I think you've shared this with me, writing one on your father, like that thing that initially drew you to like, wow, uh, I need some help here.
It's interesting. I will say I've done a lot less work on my father than most of the other people in my life. There
Uh-huh.
wasn't a lot of messiness. And um, I mean, we couldn't have been more different ideologically. He was very Catholic, and I'm still recovering from that.
Yes, I understand.
uh, Theology, the thinking and believing that went along with that for me at a really early age. I mean, I was very listened and took it in and took it to heart. And um, so anyway, that piece of it, we had a lot of different ideas, and we were very close. And
Hmm.
I came to see that the loss, I think in some ways, I came to be at peace with the depth of my loss
Yeah.
and that experience. So I wasn't judging, or I was able to really move through that grief and experience it as love for my father.
Uh,
Really sweet. And I had dreams and visits and encounters with people who were speaking for him as I experienced it and things like that. So I felt really connected to him, like he was always a part of this work with me.
yeah.
I've done a little work on him. There's some moments for sure that stand out with our difference of opinions. And
Well, I
yeah,
hope that the work is not, I mean, what I hear you saying too is that, when you have a sort of actual clashing, that's an amazing place for the work, but also the stress of loss, like
Mhm.
simply, and we're not trying to wash grief away, but that was one of my first, profound in my very first school, the death of my father, like, and I'm not even sure I wrote an entire worksheet on it. It was just being able to sit with, he died. You know, is that true?
Yeah, I think I had the same. I think I did the same piece at a school, Grace.
Yeah. Yeah.
He died, and I'm sitting there. I got the information on a phone call. My kids were napping, as I recall the moment, and I'm folding laundry, and I get the phone call. He died. Is it true? You know?
Right. It's just information coming in. I mean, father is not in the room before the phone call. He's still not in the room after the phone call. Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
it's very interesting. The projection into the future, and what I need this person to be alive for. It doesn't mean my grief is less, but I had the same feeling of being very close with my dad.
Mhm.
And like he was just he had a sort of loving kindness that was really beautiful with all his daughters. And yeah, but that it was just such a family tragedy story that he died of cancer so young, and it was like, yeah, he actually died. Is it true? Yeah.
Yeah, and I had a sense that following, like honoring that grief, and what became clear to me in terms of this misunderstanding that I had about how things are. That's really sort of what it was. When he died, I realized there's something way more connected and, you know, deeply spiritual going on in this being human thing, you know?
Yeah.
And it really woke me up to that. So I, not to be all intellectual about it, but it has been really this deep, deep love with my dad. And it was more tricky with my mom. We really bonded around the loss, and that was very sweet. And yet we'd had more clashing sort of in this mother-daughter, not untypical way.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
so
Uh-huh.
lots and lots of worksheets there.
Ah.
Sure. That's been more one of the relationships that I've really focused on with the work.
What would you say was a key, stressful belief with your mom that
Yeah,
might have come up over and over?
yeah. It's so I was the one girl with three brothers.
Mm.
Um, Grew up in a Catholic family in the South, so there were these real overlappings of very specific beliefs, and in a world where women were introduced to society, there were like parties and things like that, and you were supposed to find your match. I mean, this kind of thinking was really
Yeah.
deeply embedded in the culture I grew up in.
Isn't
And,
that something?
yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Right. I know. You think that's like, wasn't that a few generations? No, it's happening.
Yeah.
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 So so that was there, and I had my family was all really into sports. My mom, even though she didn't play sports, was a huge football fan, and they all were. And so my story was that everything revolved around the men and the boys, and
Oh,
she favored them. So she favored my brothers, was really the concept that was at the base
that's-
of this. Yeah.
I love it. I know it's great. Right. Oh,
Many
yeah.
situations that tied into that. And I did the work on, I mean, I don't know, dozens of worksheets. And I had a real sweet sort of shift with her that stands out as a really great example of the work sort of living itself out in my life. And this was, so I was visiting her back east, and we were up late playing cards, and that's was one of her favorite things to do. And as the night went on, it started to get a little more challenging conversationally, and I don't know, there's a tendency later at night to kind of, the story was to poke at and um,
Mm, mm.
stir the pot, you know.
Uh, uh,
and and at the time I had, my kids were pretty young, and she was asking about having more kids, and I said, well, I have two boys, and I said, well, I think I'd still like to have a girl. And we adopted our son, so that adopting option was on the table, and I said that to her, and she said, well, I can't imagine why you'd want to have a girl, being the only daughter. And I initially felt this knot like start in my gut and come up to my throat, and just like lock down. And I yeah, I felt that immediate gut reaction, and I looked her in the eyes, and I'd done a lot of work on it at this point, and I just saw right through it. I just saw right through into what was this deep love for me, and it was
mm,
unmistakable. even as she said this thing that, like, in my mind was designed to really stick it to me, you know? And I looked at her and I said, Mom, there's nothing you can do to stop me from loving you. There's just nothing. So bring it on. And she started crying and laughing. And
Aw.
it was a real game changer. And I can be with her for extended periods of time. And it just doesn't go to that place. I mean, we just traveled in Japan. My brother was married there and shared a hotel room, you know, pretty intimate for a couple weeks, and no drama between.
Wow. Wow.
There's family drama elsewhere, but not there. And that was always at the center of things. So it's really remarkable, you know, and even my brothers have sort of looked at us and thought it was odd. And she and I have had some laughs about how much it's changed. It's really sweet.
I
So
love it.
I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
I get to have the mom that I thought I didn't have,
Oh,
but who was there, right?
right. Oh my gosh, that's just beautiful.
Yeah.
What I like too is, speaking about sharing dozens of worksheets, like it's okay to sometimes people will encounter that or talk about that some like, oh, it's the same, the same person is coming up forever. And sure, there's some things you might that can be considered if the same exact thought is appearing, it seems like nothing's different, although you can always question that. Is that actually true? But like to just let things, watch things in a way run their course, learn a little bit, learn a little bit more, be with it again over time. And I love how Katie says mother, father, sister, brother, like just going to these origin stories of
Yeah.
ourselves and seeing what repeats itself.
Yeah. I think it's so relevant. I mean, I did so much work on her. I can say she's somebody who I don't find myself doing much work on anymore. And I wouldn't say that I'm done with it. And it took me many years to get to a place where it really shifted, and I just, those stories don't hold up with her
Awesome.
in that case. And
Yeah.
there are places where, I mean, my younger brother's one where I could be doing it forever. And so, I mean, it really is this, there's so many things to wake up to. It's not a one-time thing. It's this ongoing experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is actually cool. That's good news.
Yes. Right. That's what I love about it. It's exciting and it's kind of, you're getting just enough, just as much as you need. Like you don't have to take that as a discouraging idea, oh, I'm going to never get over this. I'm not. And sometimes there's like amazing insights in one inquiry
Sure.
session. Just like, wow,
Yes.
holy smokes, I've been thinking about this in a way that wasn't true this whole time.
Yeah. It's like the veil is lifted, or the curtain opens. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
That's true. That does happen.
yeah. But that's really sweet. I love that you're
Yeah.
sharing that about just mother. I've sometimes had the notion that if we just did the work on mother, like main focus on that, it's like 90% of our work would be done.
Well, and as parents, it's so relevant to the experience I have with my kids. I mean, it's all tied in. I mean, and it makes sense to me. Initially, when I started doing the work, I wanted to be cracked wide open. I wanted complete relief from suffering. I
Yeah.
wanted to be, the most realized me I could be, and beyond belief, beyond the story, and was a little hooked on that.
Ah, interesting.
That was really, I'd say, my biggest loop for a long time.
Isn't that funny that that can actually prevent you from, I don't, Catching some things. Yeah. Like I know where something's going. I know where I want to go. I think I know what it looks like.
Yeah.
And this isn't it.
Uh-huh. And it's this motive to really be different, you know. I mean, and the word awakened, or, you know, all the different words that are used for that are conceptual.
Yeah.
And, you know, I
Yeah.
that really, you know, there were times where I took you doing the work and used it as a way to try and push myself there. And that's not the work.
I love you say that. Yeah. Right. I will be enlightened by this process. I hope we become enlightened. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So
Not
good.
present. It's not in the moment.
No. Yeah. I found it to be the same thing. It's funny. I almost have this little like if somebody's talking about who's woken up and who hasn't woken up, and like watching that mind categorize. I even have to I had to do the work just kind of internally on that's not okay that they're doing that or that it's wrong or whatever. And even that, like, it's working for somebody however long that needs to happen. And what do I know?
Yeah.
It's like,
I just have to make sense of my own
yeah,
experience. And it's so much more peaceful to come to a place. I mean, it really is this radical loving what is.
yeah,
Not that I'm always going to be okay and in love in the traditional way, but
yeah,
in alignment,
yeah.
really in alignment, like caught up to reality. I love that kind of way of relating with inquiry and, you know, exploration and truth. Yeah.
It's a very nice way to put it, in alignment. Um, yeah, it's like all emotions too are accepted here. And like to be a human being, you might be upset sometimes, you might like get have a no, like, oh no, happening. You might feel nervous. It's like we're expecting ourselves. It's not about expecting ourselves to not just have a human reaction to the world, but it's so great. The more doing the work, the more that gap shortens, or you've just got an open, like, I might not know what's going on here, even if I'm having a survival response or something.
Yeah, it's almost like permission to suffer if that's what's happening, you know?
Yeah.
And that permission is is in some ways the biggest shift I've experienced. You know, I have so many amazing inquiries and experiences, awakening experiences. And then this one time where I felt so stuck. And I mean, how many more? I had a boss that was really a bully. And that
Oh,
was the story, just dominant and I could do no right. And I worked really hard. It was in a Montessori school environment, so it was even more ironic because that's
wow.
really such a conscious, amazing environment for little people, especially.
Uh-huh.
um, anyway, and I kept doing the work on her and seeing things, and then I would come back and it would escalate. So it's like I had this experience of I would keep doing my work and looking at my part, and, you know, without necessarily expecting much in return. However, I would consistently have the experience of it getting worse. And so this one time she was just, I, yeah, she was yelling at me in front of kids. My
Oh.
son was sick and I wanted to go home and be with him. And I just looked at her and I said, this is so not helpful. I'm trying to come up with a solution and I'm going to go sit in my car and calm down. So I went out to the car. It's pouring rain, Northwest, Pacific Northwest, just torrential downpour. And I'm in the car and I'm screaming and crying. And pounding on the dashboard, just sitting in the parking lot. And I just had this existential argument. This is so not fair. Like, how much more do I need to do here? I mean, what else is there? I've questioned and questioned.
Yeah.
I've done my part, apologized, made amends, learned, grown, and I just had this big no screaming in my head. No way, not like this. No, thank you. And I started hearing this. It's not that they were words, but having this sense of, and this too. Yep, just like this. This is how it goes. This is the way, and it started to get sort of, and this too, just kind of kept almost like a mantra. And then there was this question of, if this is as good as it gets, like, this is how it has to be. This is how it is. Are you in or not?
Love it.
And I was like, like stopped in my tantrum and holding my breath and like feeling this, like, how dare you, I mean, and it wasn't like I was praying and talking to God per se. It was this just really arguing with myself and all of the universe.
Yeah.
And then it just clicked, was like, yes, yeah, this is all worth it. It's good enough. And that sounds like a settling in a way, but it was so relaxing to just let go of this trying to be better and trying to make things okay, and always work harder to make relationships work. I mean, I've always been dedicated to wanting to connect and see the good in people and, do my part. And at that point, it was, I'm going to leave this job.
I love it. Yeah.
And it was so clear and so simple. And I didn't even consider it because my son was in the middle school there. So I was working in the environment where he was. So that I left before I had plans on it. And it didn't seem like an option. And then it was just the clear way to go. So that was really big for me. If this is as good as it gets, can you be in for that?
Wow.
So sweet.
I love it. That is so cool. You know what is fantastic about that? I get this from time to time. You probably do too. It's just the noticing, and it's from my own experience, but people will say, if I do the work all the time, will I not be passive? Not take action. Like, I've got this horrible boss. I've got this difficult person. Horrible. We can, whatever. But
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
here's the situation. Here's a relationship where it feels like every time everyone gets upset in any kind of, or something's not working. And I do the work. Yes, great. I do the work. And it continues. And I had the same thing, or I was doing the work a lot on one person. And I realized, what's the reality? Oh, I feel this thing, we can label it anger, but it's also like just a passion of noticing it's not like I'm not listening to something, because I have this one part of me that thinks you do the work and you just don't mind what anyone does at any time, or like what that means, not minding, is accepting or not removing yourself or not making a new decision or like participating
Yeah.
really closely.
Yeah. It's like not listening to that internal, like the yes to me is for something different than this,
Love it.
Yeah, that's really good. It is, the day that I decided that, I walked out onto the back porch of my house, and I'm in right now the Southeast Sanctuary, which is, well, I'll get to that in a moment, but I walked outside, and I was a Montessori teacher, and I made the decision, or the decision was made, to stop, to give notice and complete the year, and then let my son be there for his 8th grade year without me. And I walked out onto the back porch of my house, and I looked over at the garage, and I'd been renting spaces from people to do the work. And it was never quite right. Like, I was in a but in body working places where they had tables, and in one case they had a skeleton in the room, a hat on, and it was so distracting, you know.
Yeah.
It was funny, but it
Yeah.
just wasn't what I would do, you know. And so I looked over at the garage, and it just in a download was like, I'm going to turn that into a space for the work.
Love it.
And it was that same day of, I'm not going to work at the Montessori school anymore, and this happened, and it is the work alive, just playing itself out, you know.
That is fabulous. I
Yeah.
love that. Like, look what happens when you stop the trying to have it be a yes forever with that job, you know, and not that anything that you did with the inquiry was off, because it was. You were trying to be present and understand, is this a true or false? You know, which way is the direction? Do I have an agenda or not? You know, yeah.
And the other people in the environment didn't have that dynamic with her, so clearly there was something in my
Yeah.
in my storyline that bumped up against hers, you know.
Yes.
And you know, so it was really clear that it was important for me. And as it in you know, we only know these things as we look back, because at the time you're thinking, why is this happening, you know. And
Yeah.
it feels like it was such great training for me in really practicing the work and getting that sort of instrument fine-tuned, you know, to where I finally got to that place of,
Yeah.
this isn't working, this has run its course, it's over. You know.
Love it. That's so
Yeah.
cool. That's
Yeah.
such a powerful example too, of just, it's just the simple, when I have a yes or a no. It's like when I feel there isn't, I'm not adding up and saying these are the great things about life and these are the bad things about life. You know, let's avoid these and or be against these. This is what I'm in favor of. This is what I'm against. But even I somewhere along that realized I want to say yes. I want to say yes. I don't like saying no. I don't want to say goodbye or no, or um, no, thank you. That this is not for me. And oh my God, it was so amazing to catch that in the work and realize, wow, the honest reality is I don't, no, I don't want to get together with you. I mean, it's scary, you know, it's like I just realized how I just would, and it can be done so kindly. It's not
Yes.
about, you know, somehow fostering a sense of, I'm a very powerful person that draws clear boundaries, you know. It turns out, if you're not too afraid anymore to say no and just trust what happens.
Yeah.
It's what
And
the
it's not this big thing. It's just,
Yeah.
I mean, I was able to say to her, I'm going to finish out the year, and then I'm done. And I am counting on you having a good year with my son, Walter. And I worked with her as a parent. You know, I was a part of the community, helped out and volunteered with things. And I mean, you know, I still see her personality as sort of that way,
Uh-huh.
just doesn't have any teeth.
Yeah.
And I've spent a lot of time looking into how I can be like that. You know, all those turnarounds and everything have really shown me a lot more. So I don't have, I mean, I tell the story because at the time it was so oppressive feeling. But
Yeah.
I wish her well, you know.
Yeah.
And we were able to be around each other and end on a positive note. And
Yeah.
my son wasn't even really aware of any of that.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that you know, that no is becomes something totally different
Yes.
when you're clear.
Yeah. after the work is the first time I was divorcing kind of almost right as you know, that story of mine where right as I'm finishing my first school, um, that was my first husband said, I don't want to be married anymore. So it was like a huge awareness, there's lots of stuff there, but then there was dating. And it's the first time I ever told people, oh, no, but this isn't gonna, I'm not interested. Like, I just never knew you could do that freely and kindly. I mean, I just had this awareness at one point, like, wow, when I was in high school and college and before I got married, I would just kind of slip away, like whatever I could do to make sure they wouldn't be too upset. And it just like, gosh, it just didn't occur to me, or like I just, because actually saying the truth of what I felt, and like I'm not interested in continuing this in this particular way, in a really direct and kind way. I had no model for that at all, and I just thought I was hurting everybody's feelings or so anxious about that. And that still will arise with people I care about, and realizing if they have a really strong request or something and I feel the no, um, sure, that happens. Like, oh, and I might anticipate upsetness, but it's never the same. It's never what I thought it is. What I imagined.
Right. As you project, as you imagine their reaction, it's never,
Yeah,
it's never that.
yeah.
Yeah.
The
I really,
suffering of a no, or, saying no, or just as you did, like quitting a job for yeah, like I just think it's beautifully thought through reasons, where you just have a
Mhm.
knowing of what the next move is, not because you're defensive or reacting or what, is yeah, just very powerful, and you can look and have no regrets.
Mhm.
There's no
Mhm.
regrets that way.
Yeah.
Not that we need to have regrets anyway. We can question them. We can question
Yeah.
them if we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's been a really sweet. I mean, what a great tool to be able to be really stuck in a situation and look and question and find clarity. And so that sense of having to figure it out and what to do and weighing the options and all of that is really, it that hasn't worked for me all that well. I just flip flop back and forth.
Yeah. Right. And then you're never really sure if you can go back and you kind of like, God, maybe if I had stayed, or maybe if I had got, it's like all this, you continue to do it retroactively, how would it,
Yeah.
yeah. So if it just like being there until something feels solid. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just fabulous. Letting things go the way they go, and playing my part, I guess, is sort of feels like I'm playing, sounds a little bit like it's not genuine, but just doing my part, responding here, like participating.
Yeah. Showing up.
Yeah. I would say I had such I liked the safety for me of like my a kind of my personal strategy for working with life was sometimes to like kind of not really speak up, or not really jump in, or kind of have an image of what was kind and what's not kind, and you don't really get super visible, and because that's safer, it's safer there. And
Hmm.
yeah, it feels much more like, much more like I could work with it, and then meeting it. Like I've sometimes known, oh, I do the work and I have a really difficult conversation to have, but I know that's what has to happen next. You go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, instead of like, do I have? I mean, I might still have a little voice going like, do I have to? Oh yeah, no, you do. And it's great. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And I'm just had a flash of when you said that. going to have a conversation with my son about something we had going on, and it didn't go how I would have I mean, it didn't necessarily, I didn't walk away from it feeling like, oh yeah, that was wonderful. And I knew to do it. And that attachment to the outcome in that particular case, I mean, with my kids, I'm grateful that I have had the work to support me not being so outcome focused, really meeting them where they are, and I
Yeah.
actually see Maria Montessori as having been an amazing visionary, and her work being very in sync with Byron Katie and the work.
Fabulous. Wow.
Yeah, she
Huh.
understood that observation was really important with a curious mind, and to observe and watch and then enter in. And there was this term of normalizing, which is presence. Doesn't sound like it, but normal, like being really in sync with the child and the environment and everything that's going on. And then this notion of valorizing, of seeing each child as um, really whole and having everything she needs to find her way. So, which we so learn in the Institute, in terms of
Yeah. Yeah.
recognizing that the person sitting before us has the answers.
Yeah. I love
So
that so much
yeah,
about the work. Right. Can make sort of, I'll, yeah, just in practicing the work, all I can share is my own experience. Sometimes I'll share it, somebody's sort of asking, or I don't know how to answer the question. I don't know how to answer the question. And I might give a little, well, this might be like what you're thinking, because I've seen this. Sometimes it's just the working with somebody, and it's just because you're one step, you're not personally deeply in it yourself. So you just, that objective perspective is
yeah.
awesome. Why does facilitation work so well? I mean,
Mhm.
it's fantastic, you know. I love
Yeah,
that Katie says you can give somebody the 4 questions, that's never heard of it before, and just say, just ask me these 4 questions. you know, I'm going to answer.
right.
You know, I mean, it's just so beautifully innocent. No special training needed. you
No,
know.
that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
And I love that. I love that approach, or that idea of facilitation. And I don't know why I've got Maria Montessori on the brain. But in that model, the teachers are guides, not teachers. They're called guides. And it's very much like facilitation, where
that's so cool. I didn't know that.
yeah, it's the idea is you're the expert. I'm here to support you
Yeah,
in your journey, in your discovery.
that's a beautiful way to think of it, because yeah, we wouldn't expect kids to be anything other than they are in that moment. And well, usually, of course, we have our ideas about kids. They should be.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I mean, in the philosophies of education or whatever,
right,
that they, expecting them to know. I don't know, being able to walk when they're an infant.
right. There
Yeah,
you go.
these kinds of
Not,
some. Yeah, you don't.
not expecting them to be beyond that stage of development.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
How
So
about that?
yeah.
And we're all just kids.
Yeah. Right. Right. I mean, isn't it just so true? I love it. It's been really sweet. I love what you shared about being a mom too. I'm sure you've done the work with many fathers and mothers and on their children, because parenting is such a strong space for people to be finding suffering. I mean, just recognize suffering's happening there, and they're doing the wrong thing. Their kids are doing the wrong thing. And I love how you just brought that into this educator, who I know everyone's heard of Montessori, probably. I certainly have, and known families who have their children in a Montessori program, but I did not know. anything more than that, because my kids didn't attend Montessori.
Yeah. Well, it's sweet when you find these things that there's this universal wisdom, and Katie's tapped into it, and there are obviously so many other doorways and what have you. Um, and as a parent, to be working with your kids and be aware of your stories and their stories and the stories that, that sort of lineage of stories,
Yeah.
and to be able to step out of that and just be present and not know, it's a very different paradigm than the one I was raised in. And sometimes I think it's a little confusing, because mom's not directing the show here,
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think in the long run, it is already, my boys are teenagers now, and we have so much fun. And, it wasn't easy going through this real discovery style of parenting necessarily. I mean, when they were younger and energetic and physical, and it feels like, oh, that time spent and that trust and just showing up,
Yeah.
was served us way more than any books instructions I was finding.
Oh, yeah. I loved having the work when applying it to my kids. I mean, just internally, there they are, and I'm doing the work on they shouldn't be fighting, or doing the work on the messy room and things that seem so sometimes mundane or trite little nothings or something they shouldn't have
The
forgotten.
triggering.
Oh my God, it was amazing. Absolutely fantastic. And remember, yeah, before really knowing about questioning my story, it was like there, so much responsibility, so heavy, so much on them, what they should be doing. And I really began to relax that too. Can't remember how old they were, maybe like 11 and 8. Really, really relaxing with that as they entered all through high school. I could have the thing like it'll be as shocking if this person can, he would forget his head if he wasn't attached to his body or whatever, And now, like they're only in their early 20s and they are amazing.
Yeah.
Like, and the thing is, I would see those things ticker tape through, but it was like more like interacting and connecting with them as if they're, I was so happy that I found that.
Yeah.
Before, just in the time that was great to find it. And yeah, I mean, it was such a relief to be a mom, so much easier.
Oh my goodness. I mean, our older son had some spectrum tendencies, and they were both very fitful and physical, and they would fight with each other and fight with me. I mean, physically, just, when they were little.
Uh-huh.
So heads up. And the books weren't applying, and we saw this love and logic parenting coach, we saw specialists, we did all kinds of things. And
Yeah.
the work was the thing that made the most difference. And it was really the sense of, I mean, I actually had one of my turnarounds was I don't have to do anything. I think, it was I have to do something here.
Yeah.
And I don't have to do anything became such deep wisdom, such a great teaching.
Yeah.
Just
Amazing.
wait.
Yeah.
Just wait a little bit.
Yeah. Don't freak out. It's okay.
and that sense of pressure that build up would just release, and they would feel that, and trust that it's all going to work out here. We're going to be fine. That shift in orientation was so huge.
Yeah.
And so that at this point, my sons are juniors, and one's a junior and one's a senior, and I'm so enjoying them, and I'm so grateful for that. People said, oh, you think it's hard now, wait till they're teenagers. Well,
Right. No,
It's
yeah,
it's
same.
amazing. It's amazing. It's really good and challenging, but I feel really connected. I really am grateful. I'm in gratitude. I can just shift into this more general statement with that. That's what the work brings me more than anything else.
Yeah.
Gratitude.
Oh, yeah.
So much gratitude. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
wow, isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
The lessons and the connections and the way things, the synchronicity, and yeah, it's so much beyond our wildest dreams.
I agree.
Yeah.
Could have never dreamed it, that this
Mhm.
is where I used to wish for peace, feel so anxious, kind of like I have kind of a dry sense of humor. It's still there, like, the world's ending, or, or just anyway, but it used to be kind of like based on a thing that felt very, very bitter,
Yeah.
distrusting and bitter. Now it just makes me, I totally crack up, you know.
Yeah.
It's that it's not the basics that I'm standing on. It's like uh lots of joy,
Yeah.
deep joy.
I mean, going to hell in a handbasket. If there's ever been a time in my life, we're in the middle of this viral shutdown, right?
No, right? Yeah.
I mean, there is a sense of doomsday in a way, and yet, like, look at the magnolia blooms and
Yes.
I mean, and people are rethinking everything. I mean, the old paradigm is just doesn't even apply.
Yeah. Shake up. It's like a shake up, and you feel like, wow, this is going to be really interesting. And sure, a little like, whoa, like, but it's not terror. And yeah, the first thought I was questioning, I think this is a beautiful kind of like a final, what we'll talk about here, the virus. The
Yes.
virus. I
Yes.
like start capitalizing the virus.
Right.
Um, was I don't want to die of the virus. Like somebody wrote and said, what about the thought I don't want to die of the virus? And I was like, oh yeah, that's what really this is. That's the threat. You
Mhm.
know, I will die. Somebody I know will die. My family will die. Half the world will die. Whatever. It's like death.
Yes.
Here we come back to death again, which is a full circle, starting with our fathers dying.
Right.
Like
Love
what
that.
that means, what it means, and what I think is going to happen, and what unknown. And isn't that like just to find that place doesn't mean I prefer it, or say, yeah, I hope it comes soon or something. It's not like a funny. I remember doing the work on cancer because I had a cancer tumor on my leg, and I had adrenaline rush right through my body. But who would you be without the story? Like, what a great question. Yeah, magnolia tree, it's totally sunny in the Northwest.
Yeah.
Sunny, beautiful afternoon of the spring. All these the rhododendrons are just ready they're going to be exploding into color soon. And, you know,
Yeah.
just so interesting. I mean,
It,
and
it's all it all gets to it's both and
yeah, yes.
both and that is I actually have a symbol in my space of it's a wooden carved out and symbol, and
Oh,
that is that's so it's not about going from that to this. It's really this
yeah,
stretching, experiencing it over here, noticing this, and then it's sort of that middle way you hear about, right?
yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Full range is possible, and I'm kind of more balanced in the middle somehow because I see, I don't swing, you know.
Right.
I might even swing briefly, but with just to come back with the work, I love it. It's great that the questions are hanging there because it's brings balance. So this will be interesting to see what happens
It
out
will
there in the world.
it will. And I'm grateful that I don't have to live in fear or terror.
Yeah.
And I also am interested in watching and seeing what happens and where I can serve or what
Yeah.
there is to be done, and I'm aware of still have some I have my mom still alive and my husband's family. So
Yes.
checked on the elderly people I know in the neighborhood, these kinds of things that we can do. And then we'll just wait and see.
Yeah. I love it. If there is an excitement of something is activated because
Mhm.
things, I mean, in some ways you're always, every day, you have no idea what's going to happen. And, you know, you just don't know.
It's an illusion of control, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And just blows the whole thing out of the water.
Yeah. Yes. It's a reminder, like, remember that control thing that you thought, like, you knew what you were doing tomorrow?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And, but that it's exciting. There's something that's kind of, I've been feeling that, like, sort of activated with, wow, how can I be of service? What could we do here? What could happen? And, how fascinating, how interesting. Um, and I
I
don't
mean,
know.
there's a truth to it. Like I think I said that when my father died, I went to the bereavement group and there was this experience of wisdom and truth that I was getting in that setting where people were being vulnerable and sharing their pain.
Yes.
It was real. We're not pretending like death is somewhere else. We're sitting with it, and there's something really meaningful isn't the right word because that's sort of a story, but a sense of belonging, connection.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, I sometimes think, wow, sometimes, something happens, even with the work, just looking, it's like a heartbreak, like it's just pierced, it feels like a it's just like, grief. Strangely, I remember this. It was long before I knew the work, but my father was sick for a long time, and I remember, um, because of a conversation, going into my room and laying and just losing it with sobbing, like, my father's dying, he's about to die, and knowing I'm gonna go see him soon, and it's probably the last time. And but like something felt almost as if you let go of the waterfall, where you're not trying to hold anything together or keep going to work every day, even though my father's dying, all that kind of stuff that had been happening, which is okay too. But something almost feels bizarrely good about that.
It's right. It's this clarity of here's what matters.
Yes. It's okay. You're sobbing. There's like heartbreak, sobbing.
Mhm.
I mean, just like, so it was not about doing the work and not sobbing.
Right, right,
That's,
right.
yeah.
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 I mean, it's a nice idea to just be in love and not feel the pain of grief. And I don't know that uh,
Yeah.
completely. I mean, I don't know if I will, and I don't know if I should.
Yeah. Maybe all the tears are love
It,
too. There's that too.
it does feel that way, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like love, like, just, I don't know. I just remembered it looking back. And it was from doing the work on something around, somebody dying, which has happened a bit from cancer, interestingly. So seem to be in that or notice that. And yeah, looking back and going, like, that actually felt really good to just let it go, and just be sobbing. So there's that, in this time of coronavirus, the
yeah.
time of this recording.
I'll share one last little piece, a standout piece for me in the work, and that is that I too got cancer. It was a year and a half ago, and I had breast cancer, and I had a biopsy, and then after the biopsy, they said they would contact me the next day, and we had plans to go camping as a family. So we drove out into the woods when I was supposed to be getting word about the biopsy. And that felt really good to me because I
Mm.
couldn't do anything over the weekend anyway, you know? So we just put it on hold, which was interesting. And then we got back home on Sunday evening, and there were 3 messages from my doctor to call her. So I had this sort of, okay, that's,
Kind of know if there's 3 messages. You're like,
yeah, she would have left a
sure.
message. She's left messages before that the pap smear was fine or what have you, you know.
Got it. Yeah.
And so I thought there was a good chance that it was positive. And the next morning she said to me, "You're going to hear me say cancer, and I want you to hear that this is non-invasive, that it's caught really early, and this is not life-threatening."
Oh,
And I heard her, and I was able to really take it in and hear it. And I was just fine for the whole thing. It was totally fine.
wow.
It was really an amazing experience. So there are these times where it's as if you just don't even have a story to attach to. And then there are other times where it's sticky.
Wonderful. I
Yeah.
love that as a wonderful, that is yeah, who knows, this thing you think of as a threat, you might get surprised that you thought you'd have a reaction and you don't.
Yeah. I mean, it was amazing to connect with my family and people and let them know it's really okay.
Wow.
This is okay here. It's, you know, they're like, oh my gosh, you know, and watch them and to just,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
not need to go there.
Yeah. I've been just continuously moved, talk about gratitude, to hear other people's stories, or people that I really get the privilege to do the work with, and what happens for them doing the work. And I'm thinking, like, wow, that's a huge thing that happened to them. Like, that sounds hard. I haven't had it myself, which is rare. It feels like I've gotten to this,
Experience that.
point, um, and it's just so beautiful that they find peace in all the things that are the most frightening and scary. Viruses blasting through the world, cancer, suicide.
Mm,
Just blows me away that
yeah.
people find peace in someone dear to them. Suicide, just it's death in the various forms that it happens, and other, other difficulties of life. And it is amazing what people show happens when they question their thoughts. I don't know. I love it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it so much.
It's so great to be tapped into a community of people who are living in that place of questioning and willing to relax into not knowing, you know, willing to get it wrong, you know, or
Yeah,
be
right.
taken, you know, and let go of that illusion of control, you know.
Yeah.
I love that. It's so we had this little exchange earlier in the day, and changed up our plans, and it just felt so light-hearted and easy, you know, and I'm so grateful for that,
Oh,
Grace.
that's a sweet little, right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Easy. Easy. It is easy. It's easier.
Mhm. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you so much.
sharing time, and it's just wonderful. It's
Yeah.
always wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you for your mentorship and your presence up in Seattle. We're part of the same quadrant, and
So true.
yeah, great to be in this with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Lots of love. Thank you.
Love you too. Bye, Grace.